Saturday, we'll have a morning shower in spots. Otherwise, it stays cool with a mix of sun and clouds, the high of 58. Sunday, mostly cloudy, still cool with the high of 62. For Memorial Day Monday, we'll get some sun, then it turns cloudy. A little milder, though, with the high of 65. Cloudy and cool with a couple of showers Tuesday, the high 63. I'm meteorologist Jason Caterina for News Talk 1480 WHBC.
Live from the studios of News Talk 1480 WHBC, it's Kenny and JT.
Kenny, that's the music right there for a Hall of Famer.
And not maybe every Hall of Famer. When you talk about the Ice Bowl and the Green Bay Packers, that's the Hall of Famer that definitely deserves Lambeau Field, right? This is the guy happy to have with us as part of the Hall of Fame residency program, live here on the Kenny and JT Show, WHBC. Dave Robinson,
Yes.
There he is, Hall of Famer.
Thank you.
How you like that intro, huh?
Yeah, enjoy being here.
Well, we're happy to have you, Dave. And as I was telling you in the lobby and before we came on the air, you do a lot with the Pro Football Hall of Fame because of where you're located now, too. And it's been for many years that you've been doing various events, including this Hall of Fame residency program, right?
I was on the board of directors of the Hall of Fame for 20 years, and that kind of put me back. During that period, I wasn't considered to go into the Hall. And for some reason, I don't know why they had people in there, but the people in charge at that time felt that somebody who was in the Hall of Fame shouldn't be in the board at the same time. So I outlived it, but it's fun. I had a great time. Went to all the games, saw the games, and I love football. Football, if it hadn't been for football, I probably would have been in jail by the time I was 21 years old. I hung out with some real bad people in New Jersey, and when I started playing football, my father is on his deathbed. Really, I didn't know at the time because I saw him on Friday and he died that Monday, but in the hospital. But he told me to go out for all the sports I could because my mother was worried about me hanging out with this one kid. Well, the kid I was scared about me hanging out with has been charged with at least 2 murders.
Oh,
yeah. So
Dad had the foresight, right?
And grand robbery, and he was my best buddy.
Oh, wow!
But when I started playing football, he went one way and I went the other. So football really saved me because I'd probably been right there with him and with the little number across my chest. And,
Man.
But
Father knows best, right?
Yeah. Hey, all because my father told me, he said that my mother was going to have to go to work and she was worried about me hanging out with this one boy. Yeah. And he said, I just played football. And he said, I wish you'd go out for the other sports. And so I went up for basketball. And then I always was a baseball, was always my first love. And then I could jump. I was pretty good high jumper, and so the track coach asked me to go along and throw the shot put, and I got in the state meet and got a ribbon. I think it was a 3rd place ribbon or something like that. But they said if you get a ribbon, you get a varsity letter. You get a ribbon in a state meet, and regular meet doesn't make a difference. But state meet. So I got a letter that year, and then the next year they said, "Why don't you go try it again next year?" So I did. So I ended up in high school. We're playing 4 sports: football, basketball, baseball, and track.
Wow.
I got in the last 3 years in football, I had 12 letters in 3 years, and varsity letters. And I think for the last 3 years of my time in high school, don't think I ever came home directly after school 5 times total. I was always in practice, and so that kept me out of trouble. Made me a good citizen, anyway. I'm not wanted.
There you go.
Yeah, so it was because it was tough. And because I was playing sports, I never learned to smoke. Never tried to smoke because it was against the rules of the coaches. So I don't smoke. I have good lungs and whatnot. Hey, they were good last time I checked. But
You're in great shape, man. We love having you.
Yeah,
Dave Robinson is a member of the class of 2013 Pro Football Hall of Fame. Let's start with this because we just had a young man in here and talking about the National High School Football Hall of Fame. Let's start with your football career. You mentioned all the other sports you played in high school and how it led you to Penn State playing football.
Okay, let's start with I started playing football when I was like 9 or 10 years old. They had a little midget league, and I was big for my age, and I came in as a fullback. I carried the ball 5 times, had 4 touchdowns. on the 5th time, the guy didn't tackle me, tripped me. and so I came back, and the guy the coaches said, "Well, Dave's too big. He's overwhelming these kids, and at 9 years old, we're going to put him up there with the 12-years-olds." My dad said, "No, you're not. He's not going to play." Because my father said, if at 12 years old even no matter how big he is, it's the age. He's not fully developed. He's not going to play. So I was disappointed. So I left and played soccer. But and then funny thing, then when I was in 9th grade, we went to freshman football. The guy who tripped me was I played right end, he played the left end. He came and told me, I was the guy that tripped you that day. I only carried the ball 4 times, had 4 touchdowns. It was just great. But anyway, then I started playing high school football, and I had a pretty good freshman year. And my brother was a senior, and the coach said he was going to try to let me play a game in the varsity. But if we'd done that, we were Group 3. They'd had to count the freshmen. We'd been Group 4.
Oh.
So they had to wait, and when the season was over, the last game was a Thanksgiving Day game with Mount Holly, Franco's high school, and I got to play with my brother one time. Went in there, I played about 5 or 6 plays, and I was playing defense, and I was playing on defensive end. He played inside backer, and I played about 4 or 5 plays. And later, the coach told me, said, they were the worst plays your brother had all game. he was trying to take care of me.
Right.
I thought I was doing well, but then on the way home, I stopped by the hospital to see my father, and he told me, he said, what are you going to do? I said, well, I don't know. He said, well, I said, when we talk about going up for basketball, and I don't know yet. And he said, I wish you would, because your mother worries about you when you were coming home early, because with him being sick, she had to go to work, see.
Right.
And I said, well, I'll see you on Monday, Dad. And he passed away that Monday morning. So I would dedicate myself to playing all the sports. I never came home directly after school. In the 3 years, I believe I came home without going to practice maybe 3 or 4 times.
Right.
Because football season ended with Thanksgiving Day. But the basketball, that's in November.
Right.
Basketball practice starts in October. And we were undefeated in football and basketball. Wow. And so basketball season went all the way to March. And baseball season, the guys start in February, indoors. And so I just went from sport to sport to sport. And track was at the sideline. However, my senior year, the athletic director made sure we never had a baseball game and a track meet on the same day.
Smart guy.
Yeah. Oh, well, good for me. I got 2 more letters. But anyway, so I was in. I had a great. And then I came out. There weren't too many people going from New Jersey to State College. And what happened, the guy who was an assistant coach on our high school football team, he had been the captain of the Penn State football team 2 years before, and he called Rip Engel and Joe Paterno and said, this guy should be in the. You should look at him. Come bring him to State College. I wasn't Joe. I said Joe Paterno. Anyway, anyway. So he told me about coming up there, and so they came down, and he never saw me play football. They came down, and we had a state championship, undefeated basketball team that year. And he saw me play basketball, took measurements and all that stuff, and saw my athletic ability and whatnot. And so they decided to give me a 1-year shot. Like there's a club in New Jersey that awards one athlete from New Jersey a scholarship, 1-year scholarship to Penn State. And so they brought me in on look-see, and when I had a good freshman year. And then in the spring, they played me at tackle. I was 220 pounds. The next lightest tackle was a guy at 270. Oh. And they kicked my butt. I mean, I learned humility. I thought it was the only time in my life I didn't want to go to practice. And I told my brother, I said, when I came back, he was giving me to go because football team had come in early, right after Labor Day. And I said, I'm not going back. I said, I got my butt beat every week. They were playing dice as he was going to get me on the practice with all the tackles. I was the lightest one there, of course. And my brother told me, he said, listen, you're a Robinson. He said, Robinsons don't quit. He said, would you tell Dad? My father said, would you tell him you weren't going out because you didn't think you'd handle the big guys? And I said, no. So I said, I went out, and I walked in the locker room, and I saw my jersey hung in my locker, number 67. They'd moved me to guard. I said, oh, hell, I can handle the guard.
There you go.
So I started out as a guard, and then I was a tight end, too, but as a freshman. So I was playing with the guards, and then we had 4 tight ends, and three guys got hurt. And so they moved me up in the 4th to 5th game of the season. I moved the tight end and the offensive end. And so those were the days you had to go both ways.
Yeah.
You had to play, I'd say tight end, but I played tight end and off defensive end too. So, and I started playing tight end, and my whole career just changed, And I had a good year, and then next year I came back, and they gave, unbeknownst to me, what I did, I had won the scholarship. So they gave me the next year. Yeah, so they had never seen me play with me before I came in there. And then I had a good year, so I won for the next year.
Right.
I had 4 one-year scholarships. I didn't know what was going on. I thought I just got a 4-year scholarship. But I was auditioning every year. Yeah, and then when I got drafted, I said, well, what the heck?
You got drafted by 3 different leagues, though.
That's right. Yeah.
How'd you end up in Green Bay?
Well, okay. One league was the Canadian League, and they offered me more. Montreal, they offered me a lot of money. And I was dating this young lady that later became my wife. But and I was telling her, I said, well, how would they pay in Canada? We may go to Canada because they offered me $10,000 more than anybody else. She said, you know that's Canadian money, don't you? I said, well, yeah. That means... and I found they offered me about $3,000 less than everybody else.
Smart lady, right?
Yeah, well, she was the money person in her family. Right. So I told him, I can't come to Canada. And they thought I just didn't want to come to Canada.
Right.
So then got down to the AFL and the NFL, So
Right.
And Al Davis was with San Diego then. San Diego, they drafted me in the AFL. And so I liked Al, and we talked every day. And I never talked to Vince because the Packers were in the playoffs. And in fact, they played the Giants in the World Championship that year. And I talked to him on the phone twice, and it was very short. He was very short with me because Vince was all football, but at that time it was win that championship. He just won the year before, and it's going to be a second championship to win. And so I really didn't talk to Vince very much. And but I liked him, and so I told the guy, what got me? One of the guys from San Diego told me, he said, there's been a lot of good athletes, black athletes. Roosevelt Greer and those guys came out of Penn State. He said, you're going to be a newcomer. You come here, come with us. He said, you'll be the first big name black guy we got. He said, you can be a big frog in a little pond. I said, oh, yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. I said, then I left, and I kept thinking, well, why don't I be a big frog in a big pond? Right? So I'm going to go with the pack.
Let's go to Green Bay.
Yeah, and here's the crazy thing. I'm listening to Dave Robinson, Hall of Famer 2013, tell this story, and he just referenced him as Vince.
Yeah.
Vince. Yeah. Now, you and I know, but for our listeners, you're talking about the legendary Vince Lombardi, and you're just, I talked to Vince a couple of times on the phone. I didn't talk, but that's mind-boggling to me that here we are on the Kenny and JT show on WHBC Radio talking to a Hall of Famer who played for and had a relationship with the legendary Vince Lombardi. So once you become a Packer, can you share a little bit about your relationship and what kind of a coach Vince Lombardi was?
Well, we had a master-slave relationship. You can guess which one I was, boy. But no, Vince was very fair. Vince Lombardi came up the hard way. Now, Vince Lombardi was the right guard on that 7-line team in Grant with what's it called? Fordham.
Four Horsemen?
Yeah, Fordham College.
Oh, Fordham. Yeah. Okay, my bad. Yeah.
And now, in those days, the quarterbacks called their own plays. Most of them were right hand. They always went to the right. So offenses loaded up their best linemen on the right side and defenses on the left side, so it would be tough. And Vince Lombardi was the right guard on that great Fordham, 7 blocks of granite they're called. And he was a smallish kind of guard. They had the old Notre Dame helmets with no face mask. His face chest out there,
Mm-hmm.
And he was only about, I don't know, wasn't very big because his wife said they played USC came to town. And she said those big guys at 210 and 2.5 and 210. They were big in those days.
Right.
And said they beat Vince up so bad he got all inside his mouth was cut. He kept spitting blood. When he came home, she said only thing she could kiss was his left earlobe. And so what that told the kind of guy Vince was, though.
Right.
And he expected no less from his teammate. If you had a broken leg but could hop and could still make it, and then you still try to play. You play because you knew he'd do it. And I had a lot of coaches who tell me to do this and do that, and I said, you can't do it. No one you know can do it. But when Vince said something, he did it. If he couldn't do it, something he would have tried to do. And I just, anything he said, if he told me, he said, the ball carries behind that brick wall, we have no door. Can you get him? Knock down the wall. That's how it was. I love the guy. He was a great inspiration. He come from humble beginnings in New York, and during the time when I lived in New Jersey, and I knew, after World War II, Italians and and blacks and all them. They had a group together because see, Italy fought with Hitler and whatnot, and then everybody, and it was and Mussolini. But I knew he'd gone through a lot of things I had.
Okay.
The black folks in World War II had to train with wooden guns. They never got a weapon until they got over to Europe. That was how it was.
That's amazing.
It was a funny world. I grew up, and I don't say it with a whole bunch of criticism. It was history. It's a fact that I live with it. I don't relish it, but I understand it. But it was something. I loved it. I loved playing football. And I got a chance in football to just half and beat people up, hit them.
You were a great one.
And didn't have to go to jail, man.
You were with the Packers from 63 to 72.
Right.
And Kenny kind of stole my thunder at the beginning of this interview, and we're speaking with Dave Robinson, class of 2013 Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm looking into this Ice Bowl because when I was a kid, I had a little recording machine and had a cassette tape. There were two of them. One was with Lou Alcindor. The other was with the Green Bay Packers. 3rd and 3 at the Ice Bowl and how cold it is. It's just legendary, one of the coldest games in the history of football. Fast forward about 30 years later, I'm at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I'm walking down the hallway, and there's a lady there conducting a class. And this is what the first helmet looked like. And this was the first time Paul Brown ever put a microphone in a helmet. And this is a pipe from Lambeau Field that didn't get activated for the Ice Bowl because they think that Vince Lombardi turned off the heating. Is that true or not?
No.
Is that a true story?
No. When the game was over, Vince went out there and said, he dug the field. They had coil, it had electrified field. He said 4 inches down. He said it was the field was like 67 degrees. It was just too cold. What happened? Like you blow something blowing, the wind was blowing, and now here's something. They couldn't have any bands or anything at halftime. Well, the whistles,
lips froze.
Well, not the lips. The whistles, the little ball inside the whistle froze. They couldn't blow the whistle, and the reeds, all the reed instruments that froze, and the reeds you couldn't play them. So there was no halftime. And the first half, the field was muddy, and then started freezing, and you could step on it and break through the crack. It's just a layer of ice. If they had covered the field at halftime, I really think it wouldn't have been that bad. But no one thought about it. They left the field exposed to the elements. The band didn't play at all. When we came out in the second half, it was a real thick crust on the field, and we came out with regular spikes, and we didn't know it had frozen during the halftime. And the championship game halftimes were longer too. And as it got cold, it kept cold. And by the end of the game, it was only about the top inch was frozen, but that's enough. Like it was like a skating rink.
So this is the NFL championship, and there's one more game to be played. You guys had already won it because everybody could consider it up until that point what we're going into Super Bowl II. And then the following year is when Joe Namath breaks through, and then after that, Lenny Dawson. So when this is basically the championship, isn't it? Green Bay versus Dallas.
Well, it was. We thought that way because the AFL we considered that an upstart league. They were just And when we got ready for the Super Bowl, we studied the film and we saw great guys like one of my best friends, Bobby Bell. Even he played with the Kansas City Chiefs. The first game, and I watched him, and a lot of times I saw the Kansas City Chiefs, the offense, not Bobby. They would lead with the wrong foot on the block and different things, but they were so good. They dominated the other guys from the other teams. They could do that. I mean, I saw one play where the center popped out and the linebacker for the other team just sat there and froze, and the center hits him and they run a sweep around the corner. When that center came out, our guy would have been gone, Nishke. And in fact, they did the same play in Super Bowl I, and when the center dipped and dove at Nishke, he hit the ground. Nishke was over there making the tackle. They just hadn't played against top-notch football,
right?
And beating and losing to us, I think, helped Kansas City just jump. Well, Bobby Bell says that. Bobby Bell's a good friend of mine. After that, they were a whole different.
Made them better.
Made them much better. Yeah. They were at the end, and we played them later in my season. We played them in the Milwaukee preseason game, and they were much better.
Kenny,
than they were that year.
10 Packers from that team in 1967 are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, including head coach Vince Lombardi.
That's amazing. 10. It really is. And speaking of Hall of Fames, Gator Bowl Hall of Fame, College Football Hall of Fame, Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame, Pro Football Hall of Fame. Did I miss any Hall of Fames that you're in?
Yes and no. Not the foot. You got them all good.
Okay. I got one.
What?
The Beer Hall of Fame. Because you at one time, yes, you were an owner of Akron Distributorship. It ended up being Superior Beverage.
That's right.
How in the world did you end up in Akron?
When I it's kind of a long story. My degree was in engineering, and I was coming out to Milwaukee to interview for an engineering job, and I got a call from Coors, from a Schlitz, rather, Schlitz beer, and they wanted me to come to work for them. And my wife was, I was in the car driving, and I told my wife I was going to go play beer, and she said, you're going to be a beer man. What the? Keep the state to be an engineer and a respectable job. I said, hey, it's more money, and money is the name of the word. And I said, if I can't make it in beer, I can always go back to engineering. But if I don't make it in engineering, I can't always get this job in the beer company. And that was when I started, and I stuck with them. I went through it and went all through it. Schlitz was sold to Stroh. I went through all that. And everything. And finally, when Coors came east of Mississippi, myself and a couple other guys got together, and we got the franchise for Coors Beer when it first came in. And we sold a lot of beer the first couple of months, and then it went down, 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 down. And finally, we hit bottom, and we turned up and came up, and it never stopped going after that. It just kept going, growing and growing. It was good. And I finally retired from that distributorship. And when I turned 65, I said I was only going to work till I was 65. Yeah. And I got to 65. I said, that's it, fellas. And my partners brought me out. And very interesting situation. I'll tell you sometime. Yeah.
Superior's the biggest distributorship in the state.
I know it is now. I know. After they swallowed up Mars Distributing Company, they swallowed a lot of companies.
Yeah.
Okay. They had good management there. Very good management. They've been in the beer business for years and years. Antonucci was really, he
Youngstown, right?
Youngstown, yeah. Mm-hmm. He was the beer man. Yeah. He started out, his father started out, they had got wine in big casks. They'd fill the bottles of wine the night before and then deliver them the next day. That was the old days, long probably before I was born. But.
That's crazy. That's unbelievable. Dave Robinson, Pro Football Hall of Famer, in studio with us as part of the Hall of Fame Residency program. Where have you been this week with the Hall of Fame Residency program? Because when we get a different player each week, right? They bring them here. It's kind of one of the last stops, and they tell us where they've been and what they've been doing. So where have you been this week?
All over the town.
Yeah.
I've been everything. The golf tournaments and everything else, and I've been all around. But I come down to Canton all the time, off and on. So I know most of the town. I've been when I don't like cheese. I never liked it. so I went to Wisconsin, right? But I was at the place today. Yesterday at that place, she gave me 3 cheeses. I don't know where she made them, but they didn't taste like the cheese I'd been eating before. I loved it. Yeah. So you got good cheese in Canton. I'll tell you that. Good. And I never liked. I always said, people said, "You want cheese?" And no, cheese is for mice. I said, "There's men and mice, and one of them eats cheese." But I had some good cheese down here. I tell you, yeah. So now I got another reason to come to Canton.
See that?
Yeah.
You find a new place every time you're here.
Oh, yeah.
For you, when you look back on your career in the NFL, which ends in the Pro Football Hall of Fame as part of the 2013 class, what are your greatest memories? Because when we ask this question, we get a different response from every guy. So when you think back on it, what comes to mind for Dave Robinson?
Well, there's a lot of firsts in my life, but winning the first Super Bowl, of course, is big, because I had a barber who I learned, he was a 4th and 5th grade to me, and he became a barber, and I always cut his hair. And after he won the Super Bowl, the first one against Kansas City, I went home and get a haircut, and he's talking about it. And the guy in the middle chair said, I don't know why he talking to him. He said, he bet Kansas City. and here's something here's something people don't understand. All the people in my hometown, small town, they saw me play. And they said, he was good. He was real good, a high school football player. But he's not as good as Bobby Bell and the guy's Kansas City guy, because they never saw them play. Really? It's funny. People always think of you as that high school kid. I matriculated. I developed myself into a much different football player at that time, and so it was just interesting, and that's how he was one of my best friends. The guy was still all that time. He bet Kansas City, and I was upset about that. Really was.
Yeah.
Dave, those teams at Green Bay were so great. Yeah. Some of the names again: Bart Starr, Forrest Gregg, Willie Wood, Jerry Kramer, Willie Davis, Ray Nitschke, you already mentioned, and more.
Yeah.
Were they a product? I mean, the team was so good, and I tell Kenny this a lot. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of Pittsburgh Steelers that are not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame because that organization had so much success over the years. Well, I'm not mistaken, the Green Bay Packers are the last team to win 3 consecutive championships. Right. Is that one of the reasons why there aren't more? There's 12 Lombardi Packers in the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that there should be more? And is it probably because you were so successful that they got to get these other 31 teams in?
Yeah. One thing I really bothered me was our strong safety, Tom Brown. He's not in the Hall of Fame, and he passed away recently, so he probably won't get in.
Mm-hmm.
But that would have made it complete, but that all the whole line. And Bob Jeter or other cornerback wasn't in there, but he was Bob Jeter was at Missouri, I think, was it? Yeah, and anyway, he was a running back. Iowa, he went to Iowa.
Okay.
Excuse me, and they were national champions, and they had he was a great running back then. He went to Canada, had a great career in Canada, because of the money difference, he came back to America and they made him a defensive back.
Okay.
He's a great guy. We had a lot of good guys, people who could have made it. Myself, I came the long way. Yeah,
You're on the board of directors. You're supposed to get yourself in earlier.
Well, I missed the vote by I don't know how many, because no one knows. The vote's secret.
Okay.
But I missed the vote when I was up for the Hall of Fame, and some people from the Hall of Fame contacted me and said, "Well, you didn't get in the Hall, but we need somebody on the board of directors." And I thought, well, I told my wife, in fact, she said, "You want to kill your chance to get in the Hall?" I said, "Nah, that won't make any difference." Right. But it did, because they stopped when I was in the Hall. The people stopped voting for me, and I finally retired in 2012 from the Hall at the board of directors, and got elected in 2013.
Beautiful.
And that was a disappointing time, because the one thing I wanted to do was get in the Hall of Fame while my wife was alive. She passed in 2007. See, she was as important to me as Vince Lombardi or anybody else. I mean, Vince would holler and scream at me, and I'd come home, and if it hadn't been for her more than once, I'd have probably went down there and said something to Vince and got fired or something. Yeah. She was a calming factor in my life. She'd say, I said, "I'm done with it. I'll go someplace else." She said, "Who's going to take care of these 3 kids?" Oh, I said, "I better stay here where I am."
You would have ended up in Canada voting for her.
Oh, yeah, I would have. She was a smart girl, man. She was very smart. But she plotted our wedding long before I did. We dated for 6 years. We dated, yeah, and then we were married for 44. So we kicked it for a long while. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Well, the first time I really saw it wasn't even a date. She'd never been to a basketball game. I got a ticket for her to watch us play basketball. We had undefeated basketball season that year, and the state champions. And we're walking down the street after the game because they had a little dance, and she waited for me. And we took 2 or 3 dances, and I was walking her home. In those days, you never walked home alone, so it was 4 of us, another couple. Walking down the street, she said, "I'm sure glad you're a basketball player." I said, "Why is that?" She said, "Well, I hate football and can't stand football players." And everybody in the group got quiet, including me. I took over. She said, "You weren't even off my step good," when the other girl called me and said, "Why'd you say that? Dave is she had just transferred to our school. That's why she didn't know." She said, "Dave's our best football player." And she said, "I didn't know. I just would tell the truth." And the girl said, "Well, baby, sometimes you got to lie."
Oh, that's awesome.
That girl and her husband we're still good friends. We stayed together all the time. We're still associates. And after that, I didn't even talk to her. And finally, she came to my church. I just said hi and goodbye and whatnot. And then that basketball season, we were undefeated in basketball, like I said. And she came to me after the game and grabbed me gave me a congratulatory kiss. And I said, "That was pretty good." I was hooked, man. I was hooked. Man.
Hook, line, and sinker, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And then after that, we got, and we dated for so long. Subject of marriage came up about 2,000-3,000 times. And I kept telling her, I said, "If I had the money, maybe I'd marry you tomorrow. But I can't ask you to live in this abstract poverty I'm living in." And she said, "Okay." And then when I signed my contract, I was at the Gator Bowl, and down there, and the guy from Green Bay was there, and he gave me a contract. And I signed the contract on top of his taxi cab. He gave me the taxi cab. He caught the plane to New York where the Packers were playing the Giants in the championship game that year, '62. And then Vince signed it. But he gave me a check, and I put the check in the mail to my bank, and I called my girlfriend and told her I put the check in the bank, and everything was cool. And went to the Hula Bowl, and I had a great Hula Bowl. Got an MVP. It was nice. And I come back home, and my wife was there, and they said, everybody, my buddy came and congratulated me, and I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, we were running a tight end screen, and that other team couldn't stop. They'd never seen it before, and so that's why, I had a lot of yards." He said, No, I'm talking about your marriage. I got an invitation to your wedding, man. She sent him out.
Because you got money.
Yeah, I said, I'll put a stop to this. I'll go down there and put a stop to this right now. Got down a half hour later, I was addressing envelopes. But it was a good marriage. But I did. I told her all the time, man. And, you know, we're dating for 6 years. You know, you got to say something. And my line was, if I had the money, baby, I'd marry you tomorrow.
Right.
So she took me at my word.
She did? Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, Dave, we want to thank you for stopping by.
Oh,
We can go for another hour, man. The stories like that, as well as from your playing days. Thanks so much for being a part of the Hall of Fame residency program, coming and joining us, but always being around. Like I said, I've seen you so many times, and you're such a great ambassador for the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Well, I love football, and I deeply love the Hall of Fame. I tell you, this you got to have a place where you can show where your talents can be shown to the public. You go in the Hall of Fame, step back and look at the guys, realize all these guys they're great. They worked hard and they played hard, and they're the cream of the crop. In fact, I'm not to forget the other three guys, but I'm a personal fan of Sterling Sharp. I saw him play a game. He had a short career, and that hurt him, but he was one of the best, and he's one of the great football players. And I'm glad to say I can't wait I haven't seen him yet. I wait to give him a handshake. And
Another Packer going in, right?
Another Packer, yeah. He was a great guy. And his brother beat him in first, but Shannon was good too.
Well, we look forward to seeing you back in August, and we'll have you back on if you have time, because we love talking to you.
All right. I'd love to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. There he is, class of 2013 Pro Football Hall of Famer Dave Robinson, joining us here on the Kenny and JT Show.
It's Kenny and JT on WHBC.
WHBC AM Canton, reliable as ever on News Talk 1480 WHBC.